Hello and welcome to another live session here at the Graph HQ. This one, as you will know, is all about rainwater, and this is our Rainwater Research Live. This is a live session where we've got David, our resident expert on all things rainwater harvesting, in the hot seat to answer your questions and talk about topics all about rainwater harvesting. So in today's episode today, we'll talk about why rainwater harvesting can be so pivotal in helping to prevent a potential water crisis that the UK could face in the next decade. Then we'll be talking about a recent project that we've been working on here in Banbury, and then we'll be answering all your questions at the end. So make sure if you do have any questions to ask David, put them in the comment section straight away, and we'll cover all of them at the end. And if you do think of any whilst we're going along, make sure you put them in the comments, or whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and we'll get David to answer them, so you don't leave this live session with any questions unanswered. So anyway, let's get into today's episode. So David, how have you been this week?
It's good. It's nice to be back in the hot seat this week talking about rainwater harvesting. Been a relatively productive week and lots of things managed, lots of project work going on in the background. So really good. Nice to take some time out and be here with everyone.
But the biggest talking point this week has been your baking skills.
Yes, I've been back in the kitchen. Obviously I'm my own worst critic when it comes to stuff baking, but everyone seems to enjoy the millionaire shortbread, which I brought in to celebrate all the things that we have got going in February here, which of course it was Valentine's Day yesterday. And I think we've got 6-7 birthdays in February as well. So just to share a little bit of the love, and it was well received by everyone. So pleased about that. So
as so you said you're the most critical person of yourself. What was wrong with your millionaire shortbread, would you say?
Oh, right, okay. If I have to say, the toffee was a little bit too far gone, so it was going towards hardball rather than softball. So, and the shortbread, the base was slightly overdone. But okay, improvements for next time. I can't make it perfect every time.
Well, so yes, that's been the topic of conversation. Everyone has been running to the kitchen to be making their way through the millionaire shortbread, and some people, me included, have had more than one, maybe 3 pieces if we're counting. But anyway, let's get into today's main topic, and that is what we're here to discuss and why rainwater harvesting could be so pivotal in order to help prevent a potential water crisis that the UK could face in the next 20 years. So if you've had your eye on the news recently, you will see it's covered by Sky News, The Guardian, The Telegraph, all sorts of papers and TV outlets talking about the potential water crisis. So David, whilst you got in the hot seat, why could rainwater harvesting be so pivotal in order to reduce the strain on our water resources?
Okay. So firstly, it's important to understand what rainwater harvesting is. And of course, it's different depending on where you are in the world. I mean, rainwater harvesting is purely the capture of rainwater, so it can be reused elsewhere. And certainly here in the UK, we would very much reuse rainwater for non-potable applications. But of course, worldwide, it's used for potable applications as well. So bringing it back to here in the UK, of course, we've got built up very much urban developments now, which have got basically full capacity in terms of their mains water usage. And the idea, of course, is that as we have ever-growing populations in these areas, we're not going to be able to keep up with how much demand there is on the mains water network. So the idea, of course, is to try and subsidize that demand with rainwater. And we know with rainwater, we can really look at substituting 50% of a general household's use through the use of non-potable applications. So whether this be for your toilets, for your washing machine, washing your clothes, irrigation, outside cleaning. So there is quite a big proportion that we can utilize with just the implementation of a simple rainwater harvesting system. Of course, that's the domestic side of things. If we then talk about agriculturally, we know that we can substitute a lot more. Certainly if you start talking about schools and farming. So there really is quite a big impact that rainwater harvesting could have in terms of helping us in the future on our mains water consumption.
So when you talk about it commercially, what sort of aspects could they substitute rainwater for instead of using mains water?
So it's, again, similar sort of things. Initially, we'd look at that first 50%, which is generally the outside cleaning. But if you're talking about farming, for example, all of that rainwater could be used instead of using mains water to feed livestock, so cattle, sheep, whatever it may be. If you're talking about schools or potentially manufacturing processes which use water, so like cotton industry, for example, or just washing of machinery in general, all of that water could be substituted with with rainwater versus the use of mains. Now we can also dive into it a bit deeper. If we were to treat the water, with filtration through disinfection, we can then start substituting further mains water applications and with the rainwater for the possible applications as well. So we can get 95, almost 100%. So there really is quite a lot of scope with rainwater. We're here in the UK. We know it rains pretty much every other day. It seems crazy not to use this such great resource to the best we can.
Because I mean, rainwater, especially if you look at domestic purposes, how much benefit the house can get is if it's water in the garden. We know plants prefer rainwater to mains water because of the obviously treatments and the chemicals in mains water to make it potable. It can then be harmful to potential plants. We know that obviously cleaning your car will obviously be a lot better with rainwater as it is soft, so you're not likely to leave watermarks on there. If you look at toilets, because obviously again, as rainwater is soft, unlike mains water, the buildup of limescale is a lot less than mains water. So then you'll be saving kind of money on the limescale removal and also clothes softeners as well if you're feeding with your washing machines.
Yes.
And then, I mean, it's the same again, like I said, for commercial, where you've got toilets there. You can feed like massive toilet blocks in schools, hotels, factories, offices, and then like cleaning purposes, if it's cleaning like vehicles for a large delivery company, or if it was manufacturing, it can be used in the cooling process. So the use of rainwater can be very, very pivotal in order to help prevent a water crisis. And we've seen a lot of people think that the use of rainwater harvesting and the technology is very new. However, the premise of it has been around for thousands of years, all the way back to the Romans. You could see with the large aqueducts around the city, collecting rainwater to be reused in the city for cleaning and possible uses as well during those times. And then we also see it all over the world that people even use water butts as a good example, just to collect water off maybe a greenhouse or a small shed in order to reuse in the garden. So water butt is a good way to kind of start to get going to understand rainwater harvesting.
Yeah, certainly is. It comes in many different forms, as you say. You can start off certainly in a more civilized area, say here in the UK, for example, by using a plastic container or canister or vessel just to collect that rainwater for reuse later. That's a relatively simple, cheap way to go about it. Of course, we can dive down into deeper in terms of these big underground storage tanks for the industrial applications as well. But if we were to go, of course, outside of the UK, if you go to, say, like South America, for example, go to the rainforest. I mean, you've probably got men and women living in the great rainforest, collecting rainwater on leaves and stuff. And of course, again, that's still rainwater harvesting at its very basic level, but it's still so important. And while we don't make more use of it, is, well, when we can, it's just really is an untapped thing that we should really look into a bit more.
And if you look at like kind of the facts of water, as we know, there's 7 billion people as a population of the world, and you see the great stats of 70% of the Earth's surface covered by water, but only 2% of that 70% is fresh.
Yes,
and 1.6% of that is caught up in glaciers and icebergs. So it's only 0.4% to really feed a population of 7 billion people, and we already know that's not enough to feed that population with millions of people without access to fresh water. So especially in developing worlds, it is an issue, and it's going to become a more pressing issue in kind of the kind of westernized world that is potentially more developed in a sense, because it's taken for granted until it becomes a commodity that becomes a lot more expensive in order to use.
Yes, I mean, even if we come back closer to our own doorstep, there's still well, if we just compare ourselves versus Scotland, for example, I mean, we very much pay for the use of our mains water here. Scotland don't. So, of course, it's probably something why Scotland don't really tap into rainwater harvesting so much so, because there is no commercial benefit for them. However, we're really here to stress that we're talking about saving the world as a whole. I mean, it really is something that we have got the technology and the skills here to really implement and make a big impact. And of course, we very much here in the UK, we are very much one of the leading frontiers in terms of developments. All of these big technologies that you see in these very rich countries, it's kind of scary how much of it originated here. And of course, they've then adopted it. So it's for us to lead the way, and hopefully that we can inspire some people to do that today.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because with our water buds, we started manufacturing them in the 1974. And then with our first underground rainwater harvesting system, we released that back in the 90s. And yet people still think that underground rainwater harvesting systems are completely new, whereas they've been around for decades, really.
Yes, very much. It's scary if you take a step back and have a look at the bigger picture. Really, how little we have really tapped into this, certainly on a larger scale. I mean, we're very, very lucky and privileged to be here, and we should really do the best we can to preserve the world, and for certainly the generations to come, for our children and our children's children. So we should really look into this a bit more.
Yes. Well, hopefully we haven't scared you quite in that conversation of, the potential pressing issue that the UK could currently face with water resources potentially running out in the next decade, as you see on the news. But the saving grace is that obviously we're not here to say that rainwater harvesting is the be-all, end-all savior of it, but it will certainly help with reducing the need of the fresh water usage and the mains water usage by substituting for kind of non-possible water usage, where obviously fresh mains water is required, instead substituting it for fresh rainwater, which is still an amazing quality to do the jobs that mains water doesn't need to do.